Geek Out!
Hey, and welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
I'm Josh.
And we've got another interview this week. This time, it's our first Dark Horse Comics interview, man.
Right on.
Woo! Woo! This one's with Eisner award-winning
That's right.
Gene Ha. We posted the review for his book.
Sure.
It's May number 1. Comes out today, May 18th, in comic shops everywhere, on Comixology. Definitely check it out. It's a cool creator-owned book. I guess it's Portal Fiction, as
I never knew
Bill
that.
Willingham calls it.
Yeah,
I feel like Willingham just made that up. Probably.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, kind of like think going to a different world, like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz,
John Carter,
absolutely. That's kind of what May is. But you know what? Let's let Gene talk about it. And joining us this week, we've got Gene Ha. He's an Eisner award-winning comic book artist and creator. He's worked with Alan Moore. He's worked a lot with DC. Right now, he's got his creator-owned book, May, with Dark Horse Comics. Gene, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
So this actually started out as a Kickstarter. How did this all kind of come about?
Well, the idea for the story has been something I'd been playing around with for over a decade, just developing it and building up on it. And when I finally started becoming determined that I was going to get it out one way or another, I began talking to friends, and they began advising me that I should do it as a Kickstarter. So I began studying up on that, and one of the two of the big guys who were giving me a huge amount of incredible advice were Jimmy Palmiotti and Ryan Brown. They just talked me through the process and taught me everything I needed to know. It was kind of amazing, all the little details they gave me. And there are so many ways you can do it wrong, and I often get advice from get pleas for advice from people who are halfway through their Kickstarter saying, "How do I save it now?" And it's a little bit late to get advice at that point.
Did you get any advice from Greg Pak? I feel like he's cracked the code on kickstarting comics.
Oh, I'm not that close to him. I love his stuff, and we're friends online, but I didn't feel like I could really go to him for advice. And the other thing is, if you can get one of the most popular geek musicians in the world to be part of your project, I think that helps.
Sure, yeah. Certainly didn't hurt.
Yeah, so I didn't feel like his model was one I could steal a huge amount of things from.
Sure.
Because it was a perfect storm of awesome.
Now,
and I couldn't copy it all.
I mean, you've done a fantastic job. The project got fully funded. And how did the partnership with Dark Horse kind of come about?
They learned about the project, and as I was going forward with the Kickstarter, they began asking more and more questions, and we just began negotiating a deal because they wanted to put it out as monthly. So yeah,
was it kind of difficult splitting it up into a monthly from a graphic novel?
I'd always planned to do it as a monthly one way or another, so it was really nice having Dark Horse contact me. So that was great.
So, I mean, in the introduction, you've kind of got the whole thing about Portal Fiction. Was that a big? Obviously, you mentioned Doctor Who, you mentioned the Wizard of Oz, and the actual story. Had those always kind of been stories that you were interested in personally?
Yes, I've always loved stories like that. Though until Bill Willingham wrote the introduction to my Kickstarter book, I did not realize that was a term. In fact, I don't think he knew it was a term for that long until that long ago either. But yeah, I've always loved stories of people just transported from this world and then just going to another one and just learning the rules and trying to figure it all out. I mean, in weird ways. I mean, like for instance, Harry Potter takes place on our Earth, but it's a parallel alternate version of our Earth. So that's Portal Fiction. He goes through that pillar inside of the train station, and he's in another world, and all the rules change. The classic ones like there's Alice in Wonderland, and let me see. The one that really, really fascinated me was Peter Pan, because reading it as an adult is a very, very different experience. Where how would you describe Peter Pan?
He's the boy that never grows up. And so he's, I guess now as an adult myself, he's kind of like the ultimate case of Arrested Development.
Yeah, but see, the thing that shocked me as a kid, that's how I saw him. As an adult, when I read the book, he talks about how, oh, hey, there's a pirate minding his own business on the beach. I'm going to go down there and kill him for the fun of it. And then he literally kills him just for the fun of it. And I realized, oh my God, he's like a sociopathic, he's like a psychopathic killer with absolutely no guilt.
Well, he did stay a kid, and kids are the world's biggest sociopaths.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's like it's a much darker book than I thought originally.
Well, that explains the mindset of Abby, I suppose, in May.
Yeah, she does not murder. She's violent, but I don't have a lot of blood. I don't have as much bloodshed as Peter Pan by far. There's just no way I could. He is slaughtering people left and right. But yeah, I was playing a little bit with that whole thing of what happens to your life and how you see the world if you're pulled out of the world we all understand and just deal with different rules. I mean, this can apply to things like being trapped in a fantasy world, spending way too much time in World of Warcraft. To some extent, I'm also dealing with just real life situations, or just people put through traumatic situations like warfare or just huge economic distress, people living in third world countries that fall apart. So.
Would you say there's a fair bit of yourself in May and Abby, kind of? Because I feel like, I mean, I don't know your personal history, but I mean, I know you're from Illinois, and the girls are from Indiana, and so there's kind of that small town mentality for May in the beginning of the book, where she just kind of feels, I don't know, I feel like she's just like, while people are going off to college, like her friend comes back all changed, she's still kind of stuck, kind of herself. Was that kind of a struggle you had growing up in the Midwest?
You know, to some extent, it's well, I mean, especially as a first-time writer writing a long piece, inevitably the characters are going to be more like me than as I develop and learn more tricks and get to see more, learn more about how to characterize people who are less like me. I was raised in Indiana, so that's part of it. But it's also just me observing people around me too. It's not exactly my life. I am a geek from Indiana, but the small town she's from is definitely based on the small town my wife is from. And just me going on family visits to that town and seeing what life was like there.
Were you a big Doctor Who fan as well growing up?
You know what? That's another thing where I'm observing people and trying to write someone who's a little different than me. I was not a huge Doctor Who fan.
I feel like you just missed the wave, like a bit, at least in the.
Oh no! See I was on a different wave.
Oh.
I was watching the fourth Doctor Who, Tom Baker.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and I loved a lot of it, but then and now I feel like a lot of the stories were very slow and clunky, and they were just trying to deal with the fact that they had no budget.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and now when I look at it, I enjoyed when they did the relaunch with the New Millennium. I enjoyed the first two Doctors, and then Stephen Moffat when he took over. I have enjoyed the characters and the actors and the production and everything in a way that I didn't really enjoy the earlier versions of Doctor Who. But the stories drive me crazy now.
Oh, they're terrible, man. Like the Impossible Astronaut. Like Matt Smith is no shit, my favorite Doctor. But,
yeah.
But like the big season-long or series-long arcs just have no payoff for me.
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, there was a point where what's her name? Clara, the Impossible Girl, went through one of her variations where she's an engineer so brilliant she can reprogram every Dalek in the universe by just reprogramming one and going through the network. And then the Doctor discovers, oh my God, you're not a person trapped in a spaceship. You're a person who's been converted into a Dalek. We're going to have to leave you behind and let you die now. If only we had somebody who's so brilliant with Dalek technology that they could save somebody who's been transformed into a Dalek. Where would we find that person? And it's kind of like, oh God, she's right there. She's right there. Just drag the Dalek with you and just... And then the next episode is they were being chased by monsters, and he's got the next Clara, and she's dancing on, and they're dancing around in the sky, and it's kind of like, oh God, close the door, close. Oh, okay, she died. And it's just like,
The many deaths of Clara Oswin in that season, yeah.
Yeah, and just, oh God, it was just like...
That season's Rory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, So the Doctor Who love of May and Abby are not based on me. It's based on my friends.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Do you have it out for cats, or do you just kind of like, because we kind of get some evil felines and rodents in this?
Yeah. Well, let me just go back on the Doctor Who thing really quickly.
Sure. Yeah.
The thing is, I don't think that fun geek fiction has to be always self-consistent, always has to make sense. Sometimes it just has to be fun, and that's what I do appreciate about Doctor Who. And while I try to make my stories make more sense. I still love people who have a passion for things and can or cannot see the flaws, but just love it anyway and have a passion. That's something I love about geeks and just the whole idea of geeking out. And it's something I do, and it's something I admire in my friends. And I have a friend who in Texas who just is a huge fan of Japanese pop in a way I cannot understand. And I don't like the music, but I love the fact that she's in love with this music. And when I see her post about it, I'll just be like, that is so awesome. I still don't want to listen to it, but you describing why you love it is just amazing.
Yeah.
I love your enthusiasm. I hate what you're enthusiastic about.
I do not hate it. I just don't understand it.
I can totally get behind that. Like I totally agree. Like we're doing commentaries on all the Star Trek movies right now.
Oh yeah.
And for the life of me, I didn't grow up with Star Trek. I don't like Star Trek, but being able to watch we're going to be watching all 12.
There's 12.
12 movies, but to
the Next Generation ones.
Yeah, to see Sam freak out about it, like I can appreciate Star Trek through him geeking out about it.
I almost cried when we did Wrath of Khan last night.
Oh man, yeah, that's a joy. And it's also if you're so passionate about it, you can even love the even numbered ones, or no, the odd number ones. The odd number ones.
I have a soft spot. Everyone everyone shits on Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. And I'll admit, it's kind of like in my opinion, it's one of the weaker ones.
Yeah.
But it was my gateway drug. That was one of the first movies I saw in theaters back in, I guess, 88, 89, and to kind of date myself. So as rough as that movie is, there's still there's little character moments with like Kirk and Spock and McCoy where I don't, even though it's an odd number one and arguably the first one's the worst one. What am I even talking about?
Yeah. See that I saw that one in the theaters.
Okay.
And I could recognize that this is an awful movie in so many ways, but there were so many great things about it. And that's just part of what makes geek culture work. Is being able to pull out the parts you love and just embrace it, and still being okay with the rest of it. Or even kind of getting
While we were watching it, I was like, "This is such a beautiful movie. It's so well shot. The miniatures look great, but." Why did we spend 10 minutes flying around the Enterprise when we could have done that shot in 30 seconds?
They want to show you all of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me ask you guys a question. I swear it's related. Who are your favorite comic book writers?
Well, you've this is kind of ironically enough, you've worked with one of them.
Alan Moore, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. I've worked with a few who a lot of people love. But yeah, Alan Moore loves a lot of really, really horrible fiction. Like genre fiction from the 1920s or the 1890s.
I feel like he loves the Penny Dreadful stuff.
Yeah, he loves all that stuff. He loves the 1960s Superman stories that I read as a kid and thought, this is awful. He loves those things. And part of what makes him a great writer is he can see what's great in those stories and pull it out and put it in a different context and show you why it's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, that's Alan Moore right there.
The way he frames, I guess, all the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen characters, all those properties.
Yeah, and I didn't ask you if you were an Alan Moore fan because almost no matter what great comic book writer you named, no, I think literally any great comic book writer you named who's not writing, like real life fiction only, is a huge fan of dorky genre fiction of some sort. I mean, it may be like Gemma and the whatever they're called or something like that, or
holograms.
Yeah, Gemma and the hologram. See, like there's just so many things where people are passionate about. My Little Pony, or just things I don't understand, but people can go into it and then pull out what's beautiful and wonderful about it and present it to a new audience and say, yeah, I know these parts of that story were horrible or at least annoying, but here's the beautiful parts. I'm going to put it in a new context and show you why this is a beautiful thing. And that's the only thing that allowed a character like Batman to survive decade after decade after decade of redefinition, where they kept on pulling out what that generation thought was awesome about the previous generation of Batman and saying, here he is anew, here's what's really great about him.
Yeah.
And sometimes that meant a Batman who's always smiling and shaking hands with cops and stuff like that. But
Yeah. Shaking hands with Robin in the opening of the '66 TV series after they just beat the shit out of everybody. Well, I mean, speaking of favorite writers, I mean that's a beautiful way to look at it. But like we all like Grant Morrison, and speaking of Batman, that's a guy that he picks from every era. For him, it's all the same Bruce
all
Wayne.
canon,
It's all canon, and taking like Batman of Zur-En-Arrh and turning him into this totally other thing. And yeah, no, that's a great way of looking at it, and very true.
What were you looking to kind of to repurpose with May?
Let me see. A bit of it was fiction like Peter Pan, and it was also just a love of just the idea of all these fairy kingdoms and stuff like that, where you go to another land and there are kings and queens of this and that, and just trying to say, and also around that time is when I discovered the Game of Thrones book. Well, I guess it was Game of Thrones HBO series, which led me to the books, and just reading about these politics and thinking, this is really, really screwed up. This would be kind of fun to introduce there and just show how complex all these relationships are. And part of what I'm doing with May, this is giving away a little bit of a kind of a theme, a big theme, which might give away some plot points, is just the idea that villains are complex, and they don't, in real life, good villains don't live just to annoy the heroes and just to kidnap their girlfriend and say, wah ha ha ha, I've got my plan all totally set up. And then I'm going to spend some time kidnapping your girlfriend, bringing you to the base, teasing you about it, and hoping you don't stop my evil plan. And just also, all the bad guys aren't on the same side. And just sometimes people are only enemies because of circumstance. And if you give a little twist, they can become your friend for a while, and then they will backstab you.
So deception runs deep in May world?
No, it's just...
Or I guess just the convenience.
People are going to be people. And most people are pretty selfish. And if you smart selfish rarely means being evil for the sake of evil.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I always think of Dick Tracy.
Well, sometimes you have to make a coalition to stop somebody who's really crazy. So.
That's right. Yeah.
Mean bastards you need to hang. So to kind of backpedal a bit, I feel like Alan Moore, as of the last 10 to 15 years, really has kind of become a white whale within the geek, just culture in general. What was it like? What was it like working with him?
When I was working with him, he is just one of the nicest guys you can really hope to work with. The way I used to put it was, he's just you could not ask for somebody. You couldn't ask for somebody nicer unless you offer him $1 million. And if you're offering him $1 million, you're trying to buy something from him he doesn't want to sell, and then he'll be really rude to you. Let's see. There's a story I got from my editor, Scott Dunbar, of the time, where a movie producer, I think it was for V for Vendetta, had announced that Alan Moore loved his version of the comic book story. And Alan was furious about this. I was just like, no, I never endorsed it. I'm not happy about the idea of you making a movie out of it. So Scott Dunbar had to be the one who scheduled a phone call from a powerful Hollywood producer to Alan Moore. So the producer gets on the line, calls Alan directly and says, hi, I'm so-and-so. And Alan says, I don't want to talk to you. And then hung up on him. And Alan didn't have to get the flack for that. Scott did.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, that's
probably clenched his ass so hard he could turn colons on diamonds.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the people who were employing Scott were not happy about how that worked out. But I mean, I was not trying to buy things from Alan Moore that he didn't want to sell, so he was really nice to me. And it was just like he talks like an English plumber. That's what his voice sounds like. This,
you got something in your pipes the size of a tangerine.
Yeah, which reminds me of the. Oh God, I forgot the hieroglyph thing. But anyway, yeah. But he also the things he talks about are things that physicists and philosophers and folks like that talk about, which is why he's such a frequent guest on talk shows on the BBC. Talking with physicists and philosophers and people like that and doing a great job, and they just love talking with him because he's so creative and he has so much understanding. He's the only person I've ever dealt with as a creative where I could not keep up with him creatively in conversation. Just there was no hope. I would throw out ideas there, and there'd be this awkward pause. I realized, oh, that's me trying to copy an idea you did 20 years ago. And I could just hear in his voice, like, I did that. Or hear it in the silence and just thinking, I did that 20 years ago, and now I'm sick of doing that. Let's move on to another idea, Gene. So,
Back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and then he threw out a new idea he hadn't done before, and it's like, that's really good, Alan. I wish I could give a spin on that would make it better, but that's just perfect the way it is. So, yeah, there's never been anyone else who I just had no hope of keeping up with.
With all the writers that you've worked with over, you've been. I think your first comic was what 1993 with DC or somewhere thereabouts.
Oh, yeah. It came out in 92, but it was dated for 93, and it was with Jerry Jones, who now writes learned books on pop culture.
With all the 2 decades plus now, what lessons did you kind of take from working with all these writers with your writing debut here?
You know what? The writers I enjoyed working with are the ones who like trading ideas, and they're not imperious. They're eager to play with ideas and keep on pushing outwards. They're just all really, really fun to work with, and this is just got me the idea of just this idea of the auteur, like that French movie idea that you have this one creative, towering genius who has the full vision of what this story will be and every little bit and piece of it, and you must be true to that vision of the auteur.
Yeah, the Georges Méliès.
Yeah, it's such bullshit. And if you ask, sorry, is this? I don't know.
No. I mean, I've been swearing up a storm here, so you're fine.
Think about it. It is total BS. And if you go to if you read up on the histories of great directors like Orson Welles and stuff like that, they were at their best when they were accepting the ideas of the creative people around them. And there would always be accidents on the set, or just things that happened on the set where they would see something wonderful happen. They'd be like, "Oh, I could never have imagined that, but I'm open to it, and I can see that's a great idea." Or someone would suggest something, and they'd say, "Yes, please throw that in." That's not my original idea. I did not want C-3PO to talk like an English butler. I wanted him to talk like a used car salesman from the United States. But no, I think that works. Let's do it.
Yeah, I was just about to mention George Lucas because we've talked about a lot. Of course, we were gearing up for episode 7 or whatnot. That like young George Lucas with the original trilogy wasn't surrounded by yes men. He was surrounded by people that wanted to bring creative ideas, like you were saying with Anthony Daniels and C-3PO. And then with the prequels is a good example of he was surrounded by, whether it was his own thing or not, just surrounded by yes men. So every idea he threw out was, yes, that's good, let's do it. And no one else was really seeming to bring anything to the table.
People brought things to. Well, I mean those movies were perfect auteur movies, which is why they fail on so many levels.
Yeah,
and it was just no one could convince them to take out ideas, not even necessarily bad ideas, but just too many ideas. He tried to jam too many things in, and nobody can convince him that a bit like that's the first Star Trek movie. You don't need a long sequence of showing a meeting of the Galactic Senate and everyone debating to get to the point of the Galactic Senate decided this. Do it like Shakespeare and just have someone walk from stage left and say, "Hey, the Senate decided this. Oh, I am so glad I didn't attend that meeting."
All the galactic politics that Star Wars fans really want to see.
Yeah.
Oh God. Or like the same thing happened with the latter 2 Matrix movies, where they spent 5 minutes discussing the philosophy of how air conditioners feel and what their mission in life is. And it's kind of like, you know what you could have done? You could have actually had a robot of some kind going through a struggle because it has a mission and it can't do it because this is a sci-fi movie, instead of having 2 people just staring off a balcony at an air conditioner and talking about it for 5 minutes. And it's just like, it could have been a good story, but instead you did it as a lecture.
Yeah, we didn't need the 10-minute sequence of Neo debating with Colonel Sanders in the room full of TVs.
Right. And I am sure there were many people on the set who would have been eager to tell these, the Wachowskis, that's a horrible idea. Don't do that. But they'd gotten to a point where they were in their auteur phase and they didn't want to listen to anybody.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned, I think in some interview that I had read, that you were really focusing on creator-owned work for the time being now. Do you, obviously, May has already kind of gone through as a graphic novel. What's next?
Well, the thing is, it's not so much that I'm focused on creator-owned work. It's that I'm focused on May. So I just want to make sure I get the story done and get it done right. After that, I'd be open for anything. If Xander and I ever get a chance to do it, we would like to try to finish off the second season of Top 10. But we are both doing dream projects right now. create our own dream projects right now, and we're both very happy doing that. So it's just a matter of schedule. Yeah. Yeah. I think each of us has never been happier with doing what we're doing right now. So.
Yeah, though I have to say, you did Project Superman with Scott Snyder, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Scott Snyder, and the day-to-day, he was kind of supervising some of the plot. The actual day-to-day writer was Lowell Francis.
Oh yeah, I just felt that was a really cool, like, because I remember DC had like a shitload of Flashpoint tie-ins, and most of them, to their credit, were maybe lost in the shuffle. But the two that I remember were Flashpoint Batman and Project Superman, and I really thought that was a cool kind of tie-in.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a crazy time at DC. Well, I guess it's always a crazy time at DC.
Yeah, now. I mean, they're about to reboot everything again.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But, I mean, it was kind of like a joke before. Like, every 2 years, they would have another infinite, endless crisis, whatever, event, 0 hour thing. And it always felt like the same theme of like, wow, the first Crisis on Infinite Earths was so wonderful. How can we do that again 2 years from now? And that was hopefully the last one for our generation, but yeah, and then they moved on from that. I'll say now, I think it's enough time has passed. I can say,
sure,
I loved the Flashpoint idea and how it was done. Everything was moving very fast because they had essentially decided to do 2 mega giant events in a row. Obviously, Flashpoint, and then the launch of the New 52, and they did. It was neat to know, so I had no idea the New 52 was coming.
I feel like a lot of creators were gobsmacked by it at the last second.
Yeah, it was. Oh God, it was very brave. It was very huge. It did not come off perfectly, but yeah, it was. I have such like mixed feelings on it, but I am very proud of what everyone did under the circumstances.
To kind of take us out, Gene, so this is something we ask everybody that comes on the show, and I love that you kind of inadvertently, or maybe inadvertently, like name dropped our program.
Yeah.
By what are you currently geeking out over?
Oh, let me see. Oh, I have not getting enough chance to actually. Oh, you know what? Okay, I got to do a cover for Xander Cannon's Kaiju Max. And that allowed me to preview the first 3 issues. But I have not read the first 6-issue season arc until yesterday. So I finally got to read the whole thing. And it is really amazing. I think it is literally as good as any section of Top 10.
Is there because we were talking to Phil Hester, I guess, last week, and he's a big kaiju guy as well.
And the thing is, I'm not a kaiju fan.
Oh.
I liked it as a little kid. I am not anymore, and I don't catch half the references, but I love that story.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you what your favorite kaiju was.
Gamera. When I was a little kid, I thought Gamera was the coolest thing ever. Just that giant turtle who could shoot flame out of his butt and his leg holes. So, yeah, he was awesome.
Leg holes. Fantastic.
I'm a big King Caesar guy myself.
Oh, man. Let me see. I'm trying to think of the other ones I really, really liked, but it was just Gamera. I was just the hugest Gamera fan in the world. Oh, wait a minute. Also, I guess they're kind of kaiju. It was a family of robots who lived in a volcano with an old man with a beard, and one of them there was a human-sized child, a human-sized mother robot, and then there was a 50-foot tall golden robot father guy. And I could never quite figure out how they had a child together. But, yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but I really loved that one. I also loved Ultraman.
Oh, Ultraman's great, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you read any of the new manga they were doing for Ultraman?
No, see, because I'm not actually a huge kaiju fan anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they rebooted, they're rebooting everything nowadays, but I'm very, novice on manga, Full Metal Alchemist, stuff like that, but in the United States, they've been releasing the U.S. translations. I think the first 3 volumes are out. But basically, it picks up where the original 60s TV series ended, where, he's a father now, he's older, and his son becomes a new Ultraman. It's very done he looks very Iron Man-like.
Yeah.
But the art and the action for it just works so well for it. And it's something that I'm not super well versed in Ultraman, but it's a show I remember seeing on TV when I was a kid, and it's all on Hulu now. So I've always loved the Ultraman look and design, especially.
Yeah. No, there's a thing I say where I say that I'm not a very good geek, and you guys got to hear it right now, where it's just like there's all these things I don't know about geek culture. There's geek things I'm not actually in love with. I feel a little guilty about not loving Doctor Who more. Um, but the thing is, I love geek culture. I mean, just the culture we have built together,
Sure.
and I like hanging out with geeks, and I love hearing them explain why they love what they love. And it's just talking about these things is. I just love geek conversation. That's the thing I love so much.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure at this point only one out of the four of us still watches Doctor Who. So you're not.
Yeah, I've only
you're
seen
not
a season or two,
ostracized.
so yeah, you're not. Yeah, don't feel bad.
But is there nothing that like? And it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of default geek stuff. Like say, I think like Firefly is default geek stuff, or certainly Star Trek or Star Wars. Is there no like TV show or music or movie that you're currently kind of vibing on?
Let me see. I did love the last Star Wars movie, The Force Awakens, but I thought the best movie of the year last year was Mad Max Fury Road.
Fury Road, absolutely.
Yeah. I thought it was the best action movie I'd seen since I saw Mad Max: The Road Warrior in the theaters.
Ooh, I would have loved to have seen that in the theaters.
Oh God, it was. I hadn't seen the first Mad Max, so I had no idea what was coming at me at all, and it was so amped up from the original anyway. Even if I had seen it, I wouldn't have understood. I wouldn't have predicted it.
You don't necessarily need to see the first one.
Yeah.
Which
So
is
that's one of the
something
reasons
I
they
love
called
about
it Road Warrior, because
Yeah.
no one knew what Mad Max 2 was.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's great because Fury Road, that was something really cool because we're all, Mad Max fans. But, Mad Max was kind of a really small little kind of thing, kind of a cult following up until last year. And then to see George Miller, the 70-year-old director, turn in one of the most badass, high-octane action movies we've ever seen.
Nominated for Best
It
Picture.
got nominated for Best Picture, 30 years after finishing, Beyond Thunderdome. Was really cool, and then seeing Mad Max explode into this giant thing that everyone loves nowadays, now, and waiting for the next one, and it's fantastic. And the fact that it's basically the last 20 minutes of Road Warrior as a 2-hour movie makes it even better. So
Yeah, but oh God, the characters are so complex in that, and they're so interesting. Heroes and villains. It is an almost flawless movie. I mean, and, I can be so hard on things like recent Doctor Who's by Stephen Moffat and stuff like that. But I mean, this is not me just being tolerant of a geeky thing I love. This is me just loving every tiny little piece of it.
Yeah,
yeah.
and you mentioned how rich the characters are, and yet they don't bog you down with like everyone having like a huge backstory, exposition, stuff like that. They just throw them at you, and then you like figure it out as the movie's progressing how deep these characters really are. And that was one thing that I loved about it.
Oh yeah, and yeah, see that's something I love about the first Star Wars movie, where they'll just mention the Galactic Senate or mention the guys who died carrying the Death Star plans or things like that, and not bog you down with explaining everything. And this is something about my theory on what makes art great and what makes art fun and why it makes geeks smart, which is that art gives you tools for understanding the world differently. And if you define and nail down every piece of a story, so everything is defined, and you have a glossary of who every character is and where every star is and things like that, you can't use it for anything else. It's just a story about these people and nothing else. But when you leave it vague, it becomes a tool for opening up the imagination of the listeners or the readers or the viewers, so that they can build on it in their imaginations. And that's why the first Star Wars inspired so many other creators after that. On the other hand, I don't think a lot of the people who watched the prequel movies then got inspired to tell really, really great stories, because everything was defined. Everything could be looked up in a glossary or online, and it was kind of boring and just too much.
Overly scientific.
yeah. Very whiny.
Well,
It's whiny.
it's not scientific, specific.
Yeah.
And if you make your story so that it's only about this and nothing else, and you can't imagine the bigger world around it, and you can't build it for yourself, it doesn't build your imagination. It's like radio shows where, when my teachers, when I was in school, talked about listening to radio shows when they were little kids and how it built writing. It built great writing. It was a great era of writing in the middle of the 20th century before television, because they all heard these radio shows and then they imagined what was going on.
They were forced to use their imagination.
Yeah, and the and then the introduction of things like fiction drama podcasts now is probably going to generate a whole new generation of writers. I mean, in a way that I hate saying this, that even comic books can.
Well, I think the big thing with comics is the only thing you're missing is the sound, really, especially with some of the more kinetic. I mean, May has got some pretty kinetic sequences, and a lot of obviously a lot of the superhero books you've done, and just comic books in general have it's a visual medium. But
Oh yeah,
yeah.
but because we're such visual creatures, it leaves a lot less to the imagination than radio drama. So let me. A good example from Geek history is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which started off as a radio drama.
Yeah, I have the whole set on my computer.
Oh, I love that so much.
So good.
Yeah, and when they had the scene of where the ship is going through infinite improbability, and improbability gets higher and higher, and they have to deal with infinite penguins on a beach, this was a perfect radio moment. And there's no way that, no matter how much budget you throw at it, no later version of this has ever done that scene as well.
Yeah, I agree.
It's part of the reason why I don't think, as much as I think the first Hitchhiker's film is underrated, I don't know how it would have continued as a franchise.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's too bad they couldn't have done it. Well, I was going to say if they could have done it as a podcast again, but at that point, you have the original one, which is still perfectly wonderful. So yeah.
But before we let you go, Gene, I do have to say, like, I mean, I'm half Korean myself, so it's really cool seeing a Korean person in a kind of a homogenous, what is stereotypically a homogenous culture. So it really does kind of mean a lot to see you kind of, I guess, breaking the mold, so to speak, and now, jumping into writing as well. So keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me mention something very quickly. A bit of May is that it's also about the immigrant experience, and that they're the children of a quirky immigrant Czech American guy.
Oh.
And that leaves them a little bit of outsiders. And you'll see that in the scenes where she's dealing with her dad, where he's just this grumpy old immigrant dad.
Yeah, it was always interesting growing up, because my mom, while I was growing up, was not only figuring out how to be a mom, but figuring out how to be an American mom.
Yeah.
So there was definitely this kind of like, well, the other kids get to do this, this, and this. Why do I have to like stay inside and do like math books or learn piano instead of guitar?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the being the children of immigrants is very much being trapped between two worlds, and that's a very important theme inside of May too, and that's why I chose that.
And I suppose here, yeah, you make it literal. I mean, they're between dimensions.
Yeah, and it's not Czechoslovakia. They're going back and forth, or the Czech Republic. It's another world, but
Czechs. I don't know anything about the Czech Republic.
The most important thing you need to know is that two things. They made the original Budweiser, and they're very angry about the fact that some other company has made that name popular around the world.
Ooh.
Yeah, they are they make great beer,
and they pronounce it wrong.
And I think it's around 1600 or somewhere. I'm not going to get the date right, but around the year 1600, they rebelled against the Holy Roman Emperor, and all their Czech nobles lined up to go into battle at the Battle of White Mountain, and within a few hours, they all got their butts kicked, and suddenly there was just about no Czech nobility anymore, which is why the Czechs are one of the most egalitarian people in the world. All their native nobles were pretty much just killed, executed for treason or something. So
it's like France during the Revolution.
But see, the French Revolution, there was a counter-revolution right afterwards. So all the nobles came back, and then you had the Napoleons, who were like the new, who were more powerful kings than the original kings were. The Czechs didn't have anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I learned
History
something. I don't have a witty retort. I just learned something new.
Yeah, when you dig into history, you find out these weird things, and just it will be weirder than anything you could make up. So bits and pieces of that get thrown into May.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to it. And
Absolutely,
Gene, is there anything you want to tease about issue 2 before it hits the stands?
Let me see. The big cat from the cover of number 1 actually does show up in issue 2. He does not show up in issue 1. Sorry, folks.
it's perfect tease.
Yeah. All right. Gene, thanks for coming on. We're a big fan of your work, and of course, check out May in comic shops everywhere and on Comixology.
And I was not kidding about enjoying talking to geeks. This has been great fun for me.
Yeah, thanks. Same here.
And well, he's quite the excitable gentleman.
He is. That was awesome.
He was a lot of fun. He was a lot of very bubbly personality, and it was really cool talking to really a guy that's drawn for over 20 years. He's drawn a lot of cool. He's drawn Superman. He's worked with Alan Moore. He's worked with Scott Snyder.
Yeah.
He's a really cool dude.
We were saying like he could fit in wonderfully on the show.
Yes.
He's
the fourth Beatle.
the fourth Beatle.
As if to say we don't already have 4 Beatles.
Yeah, the Beatles didn't have 4 either, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But
yeah.
So I guess last week we kind of promised a deeper conversation on Civil War. So let's kind of let's take some time and really talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll go into spoiler territory.
As we do.
Cap doesn't die.
Cap does not die.
No.
Much to Josh's chagrin.
Nobody really dies. No main characters, that is.
I mean, everyone at the United Nations. Well,
Yeah.
not everyone, but a good number
T'Chaka
of people.
dies.
T'Chaka, yeah.
The people in the
War Machine gets paralyzed.
Again, Avengers.
Crossbones kills a whole bunch of people.
And dies hard.
Yep.
Does he?
With a vengeance.
He's one of the hardest. Him and Darren Cross and Ant-Man are like the hardest deaths.
Yeah, I think we were saying, touched on it kind of last episode, that my money's on Crossbones is the worst death in an MCU movie.
Yeah, me too.
Because like that dude, like
cooks in his own
that
explosion.
should have been like a nanosecond and gone, and he has to sit in it, like
stew in it.
Oh yeah,
choke on him.
Yeah, pretty terrible. But yeah, I mean, I saw it a second time since we talked about it, and it's just as fun the second time. One of the things I really came to because everyone kind of has the fun Team Cap or Team Iron Man. And I've really realized, especially the second time seeing it, the Sokovia Accords, for the most part, are pretty horrendous, And I forgot who it was I was listening to. They were talking about the reason so many people agree with Team Cap is because we as an audience know Cap's not going to fuck people over. If it was a real world scenario, in a real world scenario, we would not be like, let him run wild and free. But I think the thing that I've realized as saying Team Iron Man is that I love in this movie that Tony is a character in the MCU that course corrects all the time. Like he's like that's in his nature anyway. That's
happens in the first film.
Yeah, he is a guy that course corrects, and it's not malicious. There, and his rationale and reasoning for it, I think, are really sound. And at the end of the day, I love that. Yeah, he's trying to the pain in his face at the airport. The wonderful airport sequence that we can go in more depth this time around. Is that scene right before it gets really fun and kind of action packed? He's like pleading with Cap to keep the Avengers together. Like he's trying to do the right thing. Yeah. Everyone's trying to do the right thing in this movie.
Yeah, there's what I like about the movie more so than the book. The book, as much as Iron Man believes in what he's doing is right, he's very much painted as kind of a comically bad guy, and I think it rubbed I know it rubbed Straczynski the wrong way because he was writing Spider-Man at the time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, with this, they were like, well, now Iron Man is very much like, look, if we don't do this, they're going to do this. If we don't kind of compromise, they're going to do it to us, and they're going to do something worse.
And, I've always kind of joked that, like, so much of my favorite comic books that I've read that aren't Marvel or DC books are books where the characters run wild and they see that the Judge Dredd, especially martial law. Like martial law is always the thing I always like to say, like, this is what would happen, if they didn't have I guess they call it the Sokovia Accords or whatever. But so it was really interesting watching it a second time and knowing much more of like Tony's motivations for it, and that great scene when they all are sitting there and they're kind of arguing back and forth. Falcon and Rhodey have that great kind of conversation, and Rhodey even calls out Cap as being dangerously arrogant or naive in his way of thinking, and Cap is very much that solid oak that refuses to move, which I think benefits and hurts him at the same time. It's the same with Tony trying to course correct, benefits and hurts him at the same time.
It's interesting because Cap almost signs off on it until he finds out what Tony's doing with Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And that's something I do like they put in. Like, they kind of still, from the comic book, make Tony seem like he's not the bad guy, except for the way he goes about certain things. Like, in the comic, he can very easily understand where he's coming from in that, except for some of the actions he does. Much like in the film, you can completely understand where he's coming from, course correcting every wrong he's done in his life, which is why he gets behind the Sokovia Accords, because he realizes every time I fuck up, I have to, atone for myself. So this is a great way to make sure I never fuck up again. But then he does little things in between that make him look like an asshole.
What would you say is his biggest offense in Civil War? Because I can understand like the Wanda thing, because she obviously didn't want to kill all those people, but and he has like the great little joke. He's like, she's got a pool and like a TV. Like, I think of worse ways to spend your time.
Wanda has no idea up until that point, like, what is going on. Like, she has no idea she's under house arrest. That decision was made for her.
Yeah, that's house arrest.
Well,
But, like, what he's saying is, like, she wasn't, like, they didn't lock the door and be like, okay, now you can't leave. It's not until Vision, steps in front of her and
she walks in on the Vision cooking, and then all of a sudden it's like, something seems off, and then she just, for whatever reason, wants to go outside, and it's like, yeah, we gotta talk about that. You're not going anywhere for a while.
Even something as innocuous, because she's just trying to get pizza. She's like, let's just get some pizza. And he's like, oh, no. And she's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. And it's kind of...
look at my sweater vest.
Yeah, and it's, Tony kind of has this idea, like, that if Wanda goes anywhere now, she's just automatically going to be either a target just because, or she has, like, no control over herself. Mm-hmm. He believes she is, like, a walking weapon now. And that's kind of, like, why he does that to her.
I think also Tony's a PR guy as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's more based on, like, public relations. Like, he knows that she is the one, like, that's like it was an Avengers event, but like she's the one that everyone is singling out from the Avengers for like the cause of all those deaths. So therefore, the best thing to do to like get rid of the heat on her is to make her not
keep her lay low for a while.
Keep her out of the thing. He goes about it in a bad way of just like
a dad. He goes about it like a very disappointed dad, where like he grounds her,
which is weird because like in Avengers: Age of Ultron, Tony is the cause for all that destruction, and nothing like the Sokovia Accords come because of that, but it's like he should be the one that suffers the greatest judgment and hardship out of anyone from the public, period, for that incident. And like house arrest to what he does to Wanda is like would be considered like a slap on the wrist in comparison to anything that could happen to Tony, and nothing ever does.
Well, one, he is a PR guy, so he, in theory, is able to like do like make public statements and whatnot, and alleviate whatever. Two, we actually never see the fallout from like directly from Sokovia like we do the events of the opening scene of the Civil War. So like. So there's what is it, like 8 months or something like that in between?
They mentioned something to that effect.
Yeah, where we don't see what happens. He could have been slandered in the the papers, on TV and stuff like that for several of those months, and then he's done something to atone to it, or people just lost interest in it, except for Zemo.
Well, also, one of his armors.
I called him Zemo last week.
One of his armors is his ego, that he uses to bounce things off. Also, I did.
Look at Donald Trump. He is Teflon.
Yeah. Well,
he hopes.
Yeah,
but
what I'm saying is like people are throwing all kinds of shit at him, and he's still walking around like nothing's hurt him.
Well, I think when we go.
That's right. I just equated Tony Stark to Donald Trump.
And I was trying to move on, but fuck you.
That's the worst.
Basically what I'm trying to say is like what he does to Wanda, I see as the greatest form of him being a hypocrite.
Well, yeah, I think there's when we first see Tony react to everything in Age of Ultron, he gets very defensive very quickly. He never apologizes in all of Age of Ultron, despite the fact that everything's fucking going tits up in that film. And I think Tony, even on his best days, is very much a man that doesn't like to be told what to do.
Sure, yeah.
But he has no trouble telling other people what to do.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah.
Well, one of my favorite things, and we'll talk about the other characters. I just think that watching it again, like I've really.
And Black Panther doesn't double kick.
That's right.
Cap.
Yeah, he doesn't double kick. He fucking triple kick. Because Josh posted something on my wall, and then I watched it again. And when he triple kicked, my dad had a reaction too. And I remember my dad. He turned to me like before T'Chaka's killed, and he turned to me when T'Challa shows up. And he looks at me. He goes, "Is that Black Panther?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay." Like he was like ready for Black Panther. Anyway, but I think Tony's just such a fascinating character in this movie, more so, like we said, since the first one, more maybe ever. And I love that he's the guy, he's the only one who has to have a personal interaction with somebody who was killed in Sokovia. He's the only one who has to deal face to face. Like, I'm sure all throughout, unseen things, like Chris was saying, they deal with it. But the only one that we ever see has to deal with consequence of that reaction face to face with a grieving mother is Tony Stark. And that's something, again, that pushes him to try to try to keep the Avengers together, and like Black Widow says, keep one hand on the wheel.
Which is funny because at the end of that one, he's driving away. He's leaving the ship. He's leaving the Avengers lifestyle behind, and he's giving it to Cap and Widow.
Yeah, well,
He addresses that in film too. He's like, I blew up when my girlfriend's life was threatened. I blew up all the suits of armor, but then we had to clean up Hydra, and then I realized I couldn't quit.
Yeah, and he even says, "Ultron, my fault." In a very Tony Stark way.
Yeah,
he
doesn't dwell on it.
Yeah, doesn't dwell on it.
Okay, I mean, I guess we could say for like the 8 months between those two films, he was. Well, he even says partway through this film he's a non-active
combatant. Well, at that time, yeah, because he was in a three-piece suit.
Again, you got to use your imagination. There's a lot of shit that can happen in 8 months in Marvel land.
Well, I just believe like for 8 months he's like a non-card carrying Avenger.
Could be.
He might have been. Yeah,
could be a reserve member.
He might have just been doing PR.
Giving money to college students.
To MIT, man. To his old alma mater.
You know what? It might have taken a while to develop that hologram thing.
Yeah. I could tell the second time I saw it, so many people were so thrown off when like young Tony Stark shows up. They were like, "What
it's such a good job. It's
so good.
Leaps and bounds over Tron Legacy."
It's also like years and years.
Well, it's kind of like what they did for Skinny Cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, Skinny Cap.
Or Fat Rock in the upcoming Central Intelligence.
I feel like there's a lot of makeup in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but it's an actual actor too. Like there was a little behind the scenes video of them having a dance off. the actor who plays
Hopefully
Fat
available
Rock
on the
and
DVD.
then Rock.
Oh yeah. Also,
it's on his Instagram.
The it's not even really a twist. I remember a lot of people talk about the twist, but like Sam was saying, I think we did the commentaries. Like they basically say in Winter Soldier that Winter Soldier killed the Starks, but it was great the second time seeing it as well. That fucking floored everybody when they revealed that Winter Soldier, and the way they do it too, how they he kills his father.
It's quite brutal.
Pretty brutal. And then the mother and Kevin Smith was geeking out about this shit. I think we were all geeking out about this shit. Was the line delivery that Robert Downey Jr. has when he's like, he was brainwashed, he didn't know, and he goes, "I don't care, he killed my mom." Like that's one of Robert Downey Jr.'s just fucking
when he talks
moments.
Talks to Cap, he's just like, "Did you know?"
Oh yeah. I mean, Tony's a guy that is such an egotistical prick with this like sinister sense of humor and maybe not sinister, but just that kind of like dark sense of humor.
Wit.
Yeah. And to see him get scary in the end of that movie was awesome.
Well,
to date, that is Kevin Feige's favorite moment in the entire MCU.
You killed my mom?
Well, just that...
The Martha moment?
The realization, Tony watching on the screen, having interaction with Cap, and then being like, backhand bitch.
Oh, and his helmet just goes and closes, and he just is like, and he just kicks his ass.
Yeah, because I think the big thing going on there is the airport fight is like the big joyous fucking like tension release that you get, and it's just so fun. It'll go down, I think, as one of the greatest big budget action scenes for a long time.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And the thing is, when they fight at the end of the movie, you don't want to see them fight.
No,
because they've just made peace.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing that's so heartbreaking.
I
That's
remember
the Civil War. That's the real.
In the trailer, they have that moment where they're fighting, and Bucky and Cap are throwing the shield back and forth, and like as soon as the scene in that base starts and they're making up, I'm like, what about that fight
Yeah.
scene? I really wanted to see that. What the hell's going on? And then like that turn happens with the Stark reveal, and I was like, oh shit.
Well, I also remember like at the end of the airport fight when Falcon shows up to Tony after War Machine's been taken out of the fight, and he's like trying to say, "Hey, I'm sorry for this happening." Tony just blasts him aside, like "fuck you."
Yeah.
And
my best
then,
friend.
After Tony's made up with Cap in the base, and then the realization happens, and it's like, just for the love of God, Tony, put this fucking aside. Don't let your ego swarm in. And it's another one of those, no, fuck you, and just disregards everything that had just happened.
Well, it's almost like he doesn't even see Falcon. Like, he doesn't see Sam Wilson there.
Yeah.
He just sees a guy that was complicit on his friend potentially getting killed.
And I
and
love
there, he doesn't see Cap. He just sees a guy complicit online about what happened.
And I love that there's no, like, that easily could have been played for, like, a weird laugh when he shoots Falcon, and it never, at the two times it's fucking silent. Like, there's not a pit, there's not a peep when he hits fucking Falcon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like, just watching it a second, like, we all liked Robert Downey Jr.'s performance, but for me, like, just a second time and just having it kind of cemented even more, I mean, that guy
it's possibly his best performance as Tony Stark.
I would say his best performance was Tony Stark, because again has 8 years to build off of that astoundingly wonderful one in the first Iron Man movie.
And also, with going with what happens at the end of Cap dropping the shield,
Oh yeah,
the writers have said that's like the identity of Captain America as we know it dying. So I think in a way,
Do we get Nomad?
I was actually thinking, A, this would be a great time for that to happen, and B, they kind of did in a way kill Captain America. Like he's
Symbolically.
Yeah, he's losing the identity.
He moves to Britain and becomes Captain Britain.
Well, he's gone from literal flag waving propaganda tool patriot to an insurgent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
In
it
the
would
span
be
of 3 Captain America films.
and
Yeah.
it would be great if he does become Nomad.
Or the Captain, if you prefer the 80s.
And they bring in U.S. Agent.
Yeah, so he's the one that takes the captain suit.
Oh, I fucking love that outfit.
And also Zemo.
I like Zemo.
Zemo's fine.
I
he's
mean-
he's a plot device.
Yeah, but it's
I
like
think he's better than
You could argue they're all plot devices.
I think
but
he's
a
better
plot
than a lot of the MCU villains.
Better than Ultron.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that. Yeah.
I mean, there's like
This whole movie was better
nothing
than Ultron.
of him other
was.
than his name that it's like in any way a correlation to the comic book variant.
beats Malekith.
Yeah. But also,
Malekith is Thor's Joker, and in Dark World, he's just like this really like sullen, quiet motherfucker.
Christopher Eccleston.
True, but I mean, like, there's not even like a small hint of like purple on him or like any
Yet.
show
Yeah,
of
he's still alive.
sword fighting.
Yeah, thank God. I'm so glad because I hate it when
it's dumb. Yeah,
when
it's
villains
so
get
dumb.
killed off because it closes off that character.
Oh
forever.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
can't wait for the return of Red Skull.
I do appreciate that they didn't kill Zemo, but
You know, they don't kill Abomination at the end of the Incredible Hulk.
yeah.
We also get the leader showing up.
Yeah,
That's,
Tim Blake Nelson, come on, give it to me.
That's right.
But yeah, no, the fact that Sing Street, everybody wants some, and Captain America, Civil War, all over in Fairfax Corner right now, makes me all kinds of
It's
happy.
like fucking triple. See all 3 of them in one day.
Yeah,
And then go home and watch the Deadpool Blu-ray.
yeah. Available also on digital HD.
That was in theaters for like a while. They had that.
It's still at University Mall.
Is it still there? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they had it at Fairfax Corner for a while too. Like I think
Oh,
right
it was
before,
up
yeah.
until like I think it was Civil War that
We-
knocked it out.
Yeah.
We at my theater we had Deadpool until Batman vs Superman, and we only have 8 screens, so
That's right.
we don't have the luxury that like Fairfax Corner has, where they have 14 screens. They can keep a movie for an insanely long time, but for us to have a movie for almost 2 months, a month and a half, something like that, is a big thing.
You guys, speaking of the Alamo, you guys saw the first Lethal Weapon since
The
the list?
first
Yeah.
Lethal Weapon.
It was the 20th, 30th anniversary?
No, it's
Or was it just-
I guess next year will be the 30th anniversary.
I guess they were just doing
they're
a
just
special
doing
screening of
yeah.
it. Tough Guy Cinema,
Mhm.
and
Tough Guy Cinema?
yeah, well, that's one of the
That's the series they call
yeah
it.
they
Riggs
have
is a tough
they,
motherfucker.
they have girly nights, which is usually like romantic comedies. Tough Guy Cinema, which is action movies, usually from the 80s, and then etc. sing-alongs, quote-alongs. Yeah.
etc.
But it was really cool seeing it on the big
Oh, it was
screen.
great.
This is only the second time I've seen it. The first time was with Jake when he was doing his Lethal Weapon podcast.
Yeah.
And then it was really cool getting to see it on the big screen, getting to hear it on the sound system there.
Yeah, the soundtrack, aside from like the great saxophone, the drums. There's this great scene in the film where Riggs is being tortured, and he kills the guy by snapping his neck with his feet, and then pulls himself up, and the drums are like boom boom boom, and like the drums are so loud that all it is drums, and then that's where I've seen this movie so many times throughout my life, Squillions even, but to see Riggs run in to save Murtaugh and like kill everybody. And who's fucking next? And he's just killing people on the dance floor and like going crazy. And hearing all my favorite lines, like, of course, I'm too old for the shit, but also, well, happy birthday for yesterday, which for some reason to me is like one of the funniest lines, and that's the moment Riggs and Murtaugh bond, because I think Murtaugh realizes how
that's when the bonding starts.
He's like, I sincerely like wish you happy birthday, man, and like they kind of laugh about it. Yeah. And then also the Alamo, as always, does a fucking fantastic job with the pre-screening stuff. So I got there a couple minutes before Chris, and I sat down, and I come in right as they're playing the end of Road Warrior. So I got to see my favorite kill of all time in any Mad Max movie, where Mad Max leans out of the truck and fucking blows the guy's head off with a shotgun while he's hanging out, and it's just so fucking awesome. And then they played like the Tango and Cash trailer, and I was like, oh shit, please, you guys have to play Tango and Cash.
I hope we do.
Tough Guy Cinema, I mean, come on. And it's also Ladies Night, Kurt Russell. But that's right.
Double booking.
Double whammy. Double whammy. And then they played the trailer for Lethal Weapon 2.
I like the montage of all the time.
That's right. Yeah,
I'm getting too old for this shit.
They did like
20 different movies.
It was like a 3-minute thing of all, like, not. It starts with the first, I'm too old for this shit. I'm getting too old for this shit. But then it did like all the ones after it. But then it did ones before it, like, I'm getting too old for this sort of thing. Like the different variations in cinema, and it was fucking awesome. And then all the different times, of course, in Maverick, Danny Glover and everything else. Like it was a really fun time.
Yeah. I think seeing it on the big screen, we were able to see things a little bit more clearly. Both of us noticed that the scene where he has the jumper.
Oh yeah,
jumps
do you
want
to jump?
They're handcuffed together, but as soon as they jump off the roof, their handcuffs break.
They break
off,
and
their hands go separate ways.
Well, because it'd just be like probably just such a dangerous fucking stunt too. But it's
but like you do see them like
try to grab hands immediately together. That's as I said a bunch as well. That's the first scene. That's the first thing Mel Gibson ever directed is the jumper scene.
Yeah.
So
and then again, I don't know if it was because of being there with it just being all encompassing, my entire field of vision, my all my hearing abilities, but like that scene right after the jumper scene where they're in the closed down restaurant or whatever it is, and Murtaugh's trying to figure out whether like Riggs is just pretending to be crazy or what. Like that was just so much more intense for me.
That scene is always a favorite. I mentioned with Kevin on the first episode of the podcast.
I love that he slams the door.
He tries to
keeps going.
Get in here. The scene which got Mel Gibson Hamlet because of it is the scene where he's about to kill himself. I mean, just again, sensory overload on the big screen. Where he just fucking goes for it, and then he smacks himself in the head with a gun a couple of times. You see his ass in the big screen. That was
and the scene with the Looney Tunes. That's the one where it's a different cut, right? Like we saw it. Well, no, he's watching Three Stooges, or is that
the director's cut? Would be which it wasn't the director's cut, but the director's cut. He saves a bunch of school kids from a sniper, and he kind of like does like the Riggs role where he like kills them far away, and then he picks up a prostitute. And he pays her money to watch the Three Stooges, which I mean, it was fine. I mean, I figured they're going to do the theatrical cut, but if you're ever interested, the director's cut's actually really well done, and it adds 2 of those scenes. I'm sure other little things, but those 2 scenes in particular.
Did we see that version, or when we were?
I think we just watched the theatrical release. Yeah,
I remember there was something about Looney Tunes and the Three Stooges, because like on the TV, it says something about the Three Stooges. And then the next thing you see is an episode of Looney Tunes start.
Yeah. So
yeah.
and then speaking of other movies being played on the big screen, favorites, Samuel.
Oh,
You saw a film on the big screen that you've loved and loved.
a film. Yeah, I saw
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe. He's not in this one, unfortunately.
Damn.
No, I saw.
Spider-Man.
Peter, don't tell Harry.
I saw Enter the Dragon on the big screen for the
Nice.
first time. That's like the greatest Bruce Lee film. It doesn't have my favorite Bruce Lee fights, but it's like he just fucking owns that movie. And you've got John Saxon from Nightmare on Elm Street. You've got Jim Kelly. You've got really just like it's like a martial arts James Bond movie, which I suppose would be The Man with the Golden Gun, but it fucking smokes The Man with the Golden Gun. It's like I would take Enter the Dragon over any James Bond movie in the 70s or 80s. It's one of the
But
all-time.
not over GoldenEye.
Probably not over GoldenEye. That's tough. GoldenEye has so much nostalgia connected to it. But it's the movie that really broke Kung Fu into the American mainstream. There's a fight sequence near the end of the film where Bruce Lee is infiltrating the requisite underground lair, as you do in any James Bond kind of story. And he starts out and he's just like fists, of course. He's punching and kicking. And then he upgrades to a bow staff. And then he upgrades to a screamer sticks. And then he upgrades to nunchucks. Like there's this like escalation to it. And I always never want that fight to end. Like it's just like one of the, and of course the big tragedy of Enter the Dragon is he dies 6 days before the movie even comes out. He doesn't live to see audiences react to his masterpiece.
And that was the movie that he made, which halted production on Game of Death, right?
That's right. The only thing he had filmed on Game of Death was the final 3 levels of the Game of Death, which I feel like the NES game Kung Fu basically ripped off because you're going up the tower into escalating layers of difficulty, and at the top is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And
like always.
Yeah, you just get to the top of your life, and there's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar just waiting for you.
You know what? I say we make a remake with Shaq doing Shaq Fu on the top level.
Yeah, whatever happened to that crowd-funded Shaq Fu game, the Shaq Fu sequel? Did they just take the money and run?
Cocaine.
Go on, take the money and run.
Yeah, Josh, what happened to it?
I don't know. I don't pay attention to that Kickstarter shit.
Damn it, Josh.
But
What do I look like? A fool with money to burn?
it's one of the.
No,
It's
just a fool.
just a fool in love with
What a
you. Fool on the hill. Nobody's fool, starring Paul Newman. But the
Nobody's Fool, starring Paul Newman. Nobody's Fool, starring Paul Newman.
he got
Newman.
I think he got the Academy Award for that film.
Did he?
Or
He got it for The Color Purple.
He got it for the
Or
Color of Money.
Color Money.
Yeah,
It's
Color
not The
Purple.
Yeah. Nope.
Not
nope.
that one. Not in that one.
Not that one.
But no, it's Enter the Dragon. It's one of the, if you've never seen it before, fucking check it out. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. It's a feast for the eyes.
Did you wear your yellow tracksuit?
I did not wear my Game of Death tracksuit.
Should have.
Yeah,
Damn. I told you need to buy another one and just so you can put the footprint on it.
the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sized
You
footprint.
can use
the-
my foot.
That's right. Have the variant when it comes.
Yeah, the battle damage variant.
Yeah, like you go to a con in the morning and then come after lunch, you come back and you're all fucked up and you got the footprint on.
Yeah, he does have some pretty cool fucking outfits in Enter the Dragon. He's got that's the one where he's got like all cut up.
Oh
Because
yeah,
of
on
that
the
gun. Yeah, but he's also got like the kind of like kung fu jacket outfit with like the long rolled up sleeves and everything. And he does a flash kick, like he does Guile from Street Fighter 2's like special move in real life, and you're just like, oh, that's possible.
I mean, we talked about this probably a million times, but my thing with Bruce Lee growing up or really any kind of thing was seeing him as Kato, and that's still for me, the Green Hornet. That one season it's on, I really hope it gets a Blu-ray release like Batman in '66 did. Obviously not as popular, but I think just as important and fun to see. But still to this day, watching those episodes and seeing Bruce Lee, like the Green Hornet and Kato come into a room and Bruce Lee just smokes everybody, and it just looks out of place because it looks like he's fighting present day. It's such a mindfuck because that guy was so leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else, and it's just kind of great. And it kind of became that thing where I think all the comics, any Green Hornet comic after that kind of took notice, where it's like, Yeah, Green Hornet kind of just stays back and lets Kato do everything, and then he kind of punches the last guy and gets the information. He's like, "All right, we're moving on." My favorite thing though is in the Matt Wagner Green Hornet Year One, which is a fantastic place to start if anyone's like, "I want to read Green Hornet." It's really good too. Great Alex Ross covers. And I could see Bruce Lee doing this. Like I could see it in an episode of the television series.
And honestly, I think Jay Cho does a good job in the
He
film.
does. He really does. Yeah, I think the Black Beauty I like, and then he's very good as Kato. Although the Kato vision's weird, but that's not his fault.
It's unusual, but it's an interesting stylistic choice. But I think he kind of has the swagger.
Yeah, definitely. But there's a scene in the comic book where the Green Hornet and Kato are trying to get information, and this one guy, of course, is like, "I'm gonna not tell you where the bad guys are." And the Green Hornet's like, "Tell me where the fucking bad guys are." And he's like, "I'm not telling you where the bad guys are." And the Kato's behind him, right? And they're in a warehouse, which is shit everywhere. And the Green Hornet doesn't look back because it builds their relationship so well that by the time these guys meet, like you understand why these guys become like best friends. Like I think they're one of the best duos in comics or anything ever. But anyway, he doesn't even say anything. He just goes, "Chair," and Kato fucking breaks the chair with his foot. And the guy's like, "Well, I think they're at the warehouse." What warehouse? He's like, "My boss is really good to tell me." And he goes, "Table," and he just smashes the table with his hand, and he just starts breaking objects with his bare hand, using Kato as his instrument. And the guy finally breaks because he's like, "You." And then Kato's like, no. It's fucking awesome.
If you're wondering what my favorite Bruce Lee fights are, which again are not, Enter the Dragon's got fine fights, but my favorite fights, the climactic fight where he takes on the entire dojo in the Chinese Connection, originally released in Hong Kong, is Fist of Fury, and the lost fight scene, the uncut, like Chris was kind of alluding to, fight scene from Game of Death.
So good.
Where you see basically his philosophy of style without, because he didn't believe in a martial arts style. He's like, it's too restrictive. You're just learning forms and stances. You need to learn what you need to learn is how to react. And so he creates the martial art style Jeet Kune Do, which is literally translates to way of the intercepting fist.
That's so badass.
Yeah, which is like it's about reaction.
Yeah.
Like, so
Kind of like judo?
Judo is more about using your opponent's, like, I get what you're saying, like using your opponent's strength against him. And,
Oh,
that sort
and
of thing.
momentum, too. Like,
Absolutely.
that's like throwing them once they've already launched an attack against you and things like that.
But there's like still, I mean, you could argue there's set patterns within Jeet Kune Do as well.
Yeah.
But there's like, it's less restrictive, if that makes any sense.
Like less waiting and more just.
Well, it's interesting because the second to last guy that Bruce Lee fights in Game of Death is a judo master, and it's the one outside of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that gives him the most trouble because it's a more reactive martial art form.
Right.
It's not. I forget what flaw he exposes in judo using Jeet Kune Do, but yeah, he has a lot tougher time taking down the judo master. And then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar uses Jeet Kune Do as well, and that's why they're evenly matched in the final fight. But yeah, that's on. You can find that, I think, on a lot of the box sets, like Bruce Lee box sets. But the entire 40-minute, 35-minute fight scenes available on YouTube. So definitely check out the Game of Death Lost fight scene. I guess to kind of wrap things up for this week, because we're starting to hit that hour mark. Do we want to talk about that Assassin's Creed trailer?
Sure.
Yeah.
What'd you guys think?
I really dug it. It looks really good. I've never played any of the games. I've watched Nicole, my friend, play one of them. I don't even remember which one. One of the more, I think probably the most recent one. But I understand that it was an element in at least one of the games, but for the movie, I don't get why he has to be a present day person going back in time. Is that something that was in all of the games?
Yeah, basically.
Oh, okay.
God, up until. I'm trying to remember which one they killed, the protagonist.
Well, they kill, spoilers if you haven't played the first few Assassin's Creed games, they kill off the protagonist, Desmond,
right
at the end of Assassin's Creed 3.
Okay, up until 3.
But the framing device
Yeah.
is still there.
Basically, up until 3, they used Desmond Miles in present day, who has, for some ungodly known reason, a genetic lineage to about, 4 or 5 different assassins.
They
It's in his blood.
They reveal 3 in the game, which is to say Altair, Ezio, and Edward.
Right. He has
Or Connor, rather.
Connor, yes.
Edward's Black Flag.
Yeah, he has a genetic connection to 3 different assassins. And so basically, the device in the games called the Animus allows the person to relive his ancestors' memories through his genetic code. So he's not actually inhabiting them in a sense. He is just basically taking a passenger seat ride through the lives of his ancestors.
Okay, and then why?
There is a secret in whatever time period he's sent back that the company that sends him back, Abstergo, Knights Templar, which is a front for the Knights Templar, they're trying to find some sort of artifact
Called a piece of Eden.
Oh, okay,
Right.
so kind of, and this is a slant analogy, but kind of like that movie with what's his name, Nightcrawler, but not Alan Cummings, but the movie Nightcrawler.
Oh, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, the train movie with Jake
Source
Gyllenhaal.
Code.
Yeah, where he has to go back
He
into his
relives
memories to
the-
find a thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
A
so
little bit.
they're sending Michael Fassbender back in time to see what his ancestors saw, so they could find something,
Something to that effect.
so they know where
We
it
don't-
was hidden.
Yeah, we don't know
Yeah, I'm
exactly
gonna
what they're
guess,
going for in
yeah.
the film.
But
Basically-
well, yeah,
yeah.
essentially, the idea is he's going back because his ancestor knows something that no one else knows.
Right. And they said that the film does exist within the game universe. So the game's universe is basically the Assassin Order and the Templar Order way back in the day were at odds with each other. The Templars wanted to control the history of mankind, sort of like in an Illuminati kind of way.
Well, yeah, they were the Knights Templar.
Right. But I mean, they basically
Holy
like
Grail and
wanted to not outright control mankind, but steer what path they took. And the assassins always fought for man to, choose his own destiny. Later, you find out that they were doing it through pieces of Eden, which were alien technology that belonged to an ancient civilization that inhabited Earth in the past, was wiped out by solar radiation, and is a similar event that's going to be happening again in the future. The assassins in the future are trying to find the pieces of Eden to stop this. The Templars are trying to find the pieces of Eden to control mankind still and not stop it.
This game series just got a whole lot more sci-fi. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I thought it was just parkour in the medieval times.
They don't really reveal the more sci-fi elements until like
At
probably
least Assassin's Creed 3.
really Brotherhood.
Oh, yeah, definitely Brotherhood. But I remember playing through the game, and unless you went out of your way to find certain things, that part of the story was very well hidden. When I started understanding where the story was headed, I was like, I swear to God, if this turns out to be aliens, I'm going to be fucking upset. I played the next game, it's like, oh, by the way, it's aliens. I'm like, God
Giorgio
damn it.
Tisalaki is...
Yeah. But no, I mean,
it's not how you pronounce his name.
Fassbender's got ripped shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do like the change they made with the Animus.
Yeah, it
And
looks
then
pretty
it's a
cool.
claw machine.
Well, yeah, that's basically not a massage table that he's
It's,
just lying back on through the entire film.
Yeah. There's... keep
It's-
talking. There's a movie that uses something exactly like
It's kind of like a 4D experience.
Story.
The
not a claw machine.
What about
Virtuosity uses a virtual reality
Yeah.
thing similar to that.
what did you guys think of the trailer being set to Kanye's "I Am a God"?
I love that song. I have no idea why it's there. I mean, I do know why, because it's Kanye and it's money and it's whatever. But
Because it worked so well with Creed.
yeah. I mean, they use
I mean, we've
Kanye.
been
not
talking.
that song,
We've
but-
been talking
Oh, yeah,
about setting an action scene
Sure,
to Kanye
yeah.
West since On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
And then they did it, and you guys
maybe
are
like
pissing all over.
maybe like
hey,
20th.
I didn't say a goddamn word.
That's true. That's true. You have it.
My thing is my thing is I love Assassin's Creed 2. For some reason, I just like I don't
a
know. Is
great
that
one,
is that
man.
considered the
It's a
best? I don't know. I lashed on it like a motherfucker.
That's the first. That's one of the first Xbox 360 games where I got every single achievement.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Jake, up until I'd say... I'd say yes. To date, Assassin's Creed 2 was probably at release the best of...
Okay. It's
of
just
them.
it's a great game, and I it would always take me out of the game when they do like the present day stuff, and I was just so uninterested. I just wanted to be this like badass assassin, run around and take out bad guys, and jump in hay and hide in like barrels or whatever. But my thing is like I'm just so
Dive off the top of a building and land into a pile of hay
Yeah.
and be fine.
I mean, the trailer looked really, really awesome.
Logic.
There's some
Shane O'Mac style.
yeah, there's some really great stuff in the trailer. But I'm just so wary about any video game stuff. Like even like games that are great, I'm super cautious about any video game adaptations for movies because there's some just unbelievable. Like I didn't see it in theaters. I just watched the Mad Max one. I was like, oh, Marky Mark's in it. It's fucking horrendous. I mean, like
Max Payne.
Max Payne. What did I say?
Mad Max.
Oh shit.
I was about to say Mad Max was a great movie.
Thunderdome.
Although the game probably not
I haven't
so
played
much.
the game. I don't have an Xbox One yet.
I don't
But
know. Last I heard, people weren't too impressed with it.
yeah, well,
But that was
I mean, it wasn't
that was like right when it came out.
From what I understand, it's not abysmal.
I have a very like as much as I'm like I don't like video game adaptations for movies. I feel like I have a very low standard for video games. Like I will get like so like that was such a fun fucking game, and then I'm reading about it to see if there's like a sequel or whatever, and they're like this game is fucking garbage, and I'm like oh shit, I love that game.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep in mind, I own Batman Forever on the Super Nintendo and Superman 64, so
I own Batman Forever on the Game Gear.
I own Batman and Robin on Laserdisc.
The fuck out of here.
You all
Bought
are
it
brave
by
men.
itself. Like at least my Blu-ray was like a four movie
box
set. Yeah, no, I was like, you know what? I need to complete the set: Batman Forever and Batman and Robin Laserdisc.
But Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard are like
yeah, and it's the
I
same
love
director that directed him in Macbeth as well.
yeah. I mean, let this be the one. Let this be the one to wash away the sins of video game adaptations.
I mean, again, the Silent Hill ones were pretty damn good.
I only
loved them.
saw the first one, and I really liked it.
I mean, I remember walking out of the theater and just being like, Jesus Christ, this is just as frightening as the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat.
The first Mortal Kombat, not Annihilation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super
Mario Brothers.
I'm there with you.
Right. Okay. And the
Nintendo did just apparently, or I didn't actually read the article, so I don't know what the details are. But
they're
something
licensing
about a
out their
movie.
shit. Yeah.
To create a Nintendo cinematic universe.
Yeah.
That's fine.
God bless you, Nintendo, for attempting that again.
They never attempted it once.
Yeah, they just
cock.
they just licensed out Mario Brothers.
Mario Brothers is a standalone.
Hey, you know what?
If
It could have
done
been.
well.
It might have been like Man of Steel, where they were just like, oh.
Well, I think what it's probably they're probably taking so many cues from like Nintendo Land, like for the Wii U, where it's like all the big Nintendo properties, F-Zero, Mario, DK,
And
even fucking Ninja.
And they signed a contract, I want to say, with like Universal Studios to like start putting Nintendo themed rides in their parks as well.
Can't wait for the Mr. Game & Watch movie.
As long as he turns into the Game & Watch-topus.
Oh yeah.
or Juggler. I don't know why, but that's always my go-to. Like, oh, Mr. Game & Watch, the Juggler.
I want like an Akira Captain Falcon movie.
No, what you want is an Akira Excite Bike movie.
What I want is a longer Akira.
The
movie.
fuck out of here.
I want an Akira movie series.
I want an Akira Excite Bike movie. I actually sent a tweet to
No,
Metroid
F-Zero actually
movie.
makes more sense than
yeah. I sent a tweet to Pat Mills, the co-creator of Martial Law. And anytime I have a harebrained scheme for martial law thing, I send it to him on Twitter, and he'll like favorite it or retweet it or respond.
Nice.
And I was like, imagine a martial law movie, an animated martial law movie in the style of Akira. And I sent it to him, and he like retweeted it and liked it. And the people were just blowing up my phone like, "Give me this fucking thing now!"
Yeah, man.
In like 5 years, when it gets made, you can like screenshot that he retweeted you.
Yeah.
In fact, I would recommend screenshotting it now.
The only
so that you
I
can
did.
find it.
It's in my phone. The only way I could ever play martial law would be to voice him, and even that would be like not happening because he's like the ultimate male versus the ultimate meatball. Dude's fucking jacked and awesome.
Yeah, man.
But is he jacked to the tits?
Oh yeah,
He's very much kind of looks like an S&M guy, so yeah.
he looks like a walking tree. His arms covered in barbed wire.
Like
Yeah.
Groot?
Sure.
Well, he's
like
a walking tree.
like a sexual
like an
Groot.
ent?
Sexual Groot.
Sexual Groot.
His last name's Gilmore, so that means he could be related to the Gilmore Girls.
Ooh.
Sure.
Little-
That's in my head canon.
But
He's like a great descendant.
He's
of...
Rory Gilmore's son.
Yep.
Headcanon.
Accepted.
Sure, man.
I've never watched either of the properties, but all right.
You should read it. It's fucking dope.
The closest I've gotten to martial law was watching Stallone's Judge Dredd and the newer Dredd.
Yeah.
You guys got
I
anything?
think that's close enough.
Yeah. Just take it from there. But you guys got anything to add before we sign off for the week?
By the time we're recording this, it's my sister's 21st birthday.
Happy birthday, Denise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Noose.
Yeah.
Denise.
Now you can legally drink. Not that ever stopped you before.
Yeah. Yeah. You can pretend like you've never had a beer before.
Don't your parents listen to this show?
They
don't
ain't
know.
dumb.
Like I give a fuck. Yeah, man. But well, thanks again to Gene Ha for coming on the show. Remember, May #1 is out now in comic shops and Comixology, and it's awesome. You know, we've got the review up, so yeah, definitely check it out. And hey, this has been another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
I'm Josh.
Adios.
Thank you very much.
Good night, Eric Bana.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, you know, we've got a new commentary every Monday. We've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.
Just one job.
Play that fucking thing back. Play it back.
It was so funny to like just watch like 10 seconds. 10 seconds worth
Play
of
that
nothing
shit back. I
and
want to
just-
hear it.